Now will we see the magic?
All right, where's Murray? Okay, who is it?
This is Jesus, kid.
Know then that it is the year 10,191.
Yes, we are bored. We're all bored now.
Hi, good night.
Good night.
Hello, and welcome to Mary vs. the Movies with your host, Mary Jones.
And Dennis Ling.
And this week we are watching the 1982 Werner Herzog film, Fitzcarraldo. Have you seen any Werner Herzog films, Dennis?
Yeah, I saw Agira.
Oh, you've seen Agira. Okay.
Yeah. I saw it in the library in Chestnut Hill.
Whoa, they just had a public showing?
Yep.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I think the only Herzog film I've seen, oddly enough, is Werner Herzog Eats His Shoe.
Oh.
Which is, yeah, it's a very funny, like, kind of documentary. It's only like half an hour long. But that's really the only film that he's made that I've seen, which is funny because we actually have a copy of Cave of Forgotten Dreams downstairs that I got from a free DVDs box at work one time. I'm not that familiar with his actual work, except that I am and I'm not, because here's the thing. I've listened to many interviews with him. I find him a fascinating person, but I haven't seen a whole lot of his own work.
Well, we've seen him in Parks and Rec.
Well, we've seen him on The Mandalorian.
Right. Oh, yeah, that too.
You of all people.
Well, there he's a Star Wars character, so it's not really him.
Are you sure? But no, I've listened to interviews with him and read interviews with him, and I find him just a fascinating person. I'm familiar with excerpts of Grizzly Man, but like I've never actually watched Trozic. I haven't watched Agira. I haven't watched Fitzcarraldo. Yeah, there's a lot of his films that I haven't seen. Port of Call, New Orleans. Isn't he in that? Or he is the director of that?
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
He has such a strange.
It's too bad it's not an 80s film.
and isn't he the villain in like the Jack Reacher movie?
I never saw it.
But like he has such a weird career.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is all over the place. Oddly enough, I think my introduction to Herzog was twofold. One, Grizzly Man came out and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And two, Paul F. Tompkins does a hell of an impression.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. And I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you've heard it or seen it. But yeah, so like I've never actually seen much in the way of his filmmaking, but I'm aware of him. And I know he's intense.
Yep.
When it comes to filmmaking. And I think that's part of the reason why I haven't really done a deep dive, because I feel like this is a filmmaker where I should be paying attention when I'm watching. You know, because some stuff is popcorn, or you're going to go in and it's just going to be enjoyable. I had no trepidation when we were watching Desperately Seeking Susan.
Or Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid.
Or Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, because I was just like, yeah, man, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be a lark. I mean, it was the same thing when we watched Predator. My impression is that this is gonna be intense, and I don't know a whole lot about this movie other than it stars Klaus Kinski, who seems again like an intense dude, and it's about him dragging a boat across a jungle. I assume making people would drag the boat, but I don't know more than that. I don't know why they're dragging a boat across the jungle. I don't know I don't know which jungle they're in. I think it's in South America. I did stumble across one fact by accident. I believe this takes place sometime in like around 1910 or 1920, or maybe in the 20s. Like I just know it's like the early part of the 20th century. And I only know that because I was looking at a list on Letterboxd of I guess like film set in like, you know, the Belle Epoque and all that. Again, I don't know why this dude is dragging a boat, a ship really, across the jungle.
Have you seen Klaus Kinski in anything?
I've seen his face.
Yeah.
I've never seen him. Like I said, I haven't seen Agira or Aguirre, or I'm not entirely sure how even to say the name of the film. So I don't know why he's dragging. I just know that he's going to be like my impression is that he will be a terrifying force of nature of a person. Like that is my that's what I expect of both Klaus Kinski and of Werner Herzog. Slightly terrifying force of nature. I keep thinking like they're dragging the boat across the jungle because they want to put on a play. But I think I might be confusing that with the Amazon TV show Mozart in the Jungle, which I've never actually seen. But for some reason, I do have this feeling that like there's a reason they're dragging this ship across the jungle, and it's to put on like an opera, maybe. But I have a feeling that's not true. I don't know.
I think I might know less about this movie than you do. So
Right. Well, that's a good thing, maybe. So yeah, I'm very excited to watch this movie. This is going to be intense. It's a long movie. I know that much. It's 2 hours and 38 minutes.
I think it's in German.
That's the other thing I didn't know. Like, I don't even know what language this movie is in.
I'm not sure.
So it might be in German. Because some of his movies are in English. Some of them are in German, I think. You know, it kind of goes all over the, you know.
So I'm thinking, like, if it is in German, I probably put it in subtitles.
Oh, that's
but
good.
We'll find out.
Yeah. No, I'm good with subtitles.
If not, we may have to rent it. So is what I'm saying.
You mean no? They wouldn't put out a dubbed version, would they? What? You think they would put up a? Oh, you mean there might not be subtitles?
Yeah.
In our copy?
Right.
Oh, Dennis,
So-
I took 1 semester of German in college. It's been a really long time.
Maybe there's no words.
You know, honestly, if he made a silent movie, that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to see a Werner Herzog silent movie.
Finn. That's the only word in the movie would be the end. Finn.
That's French, though.
You know, it's movie talk.
All right, are we ready? Are we ready to
Sure.
watch Fitzcarraldo?
Yeah.
All right.
So imagine that Belloc from Raiders of the Lost Ark wrote a movie or directed a movie. I feel like that's what we just saw. He's the bad guy, but he speaks the language. So
Oh my God! Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of, and he is dressed kind of like Belloc too.
Exactly.
So, where to begin with Fitzcarraldo, other than what you just said? Wow, that was a fascinating film.
yeah,
I mean, what if we made Ahab the hero?
yeah,
What if Kurtz's madness in the jungle, was sympathetic? Yeah. So,
well, let's quick over the plot.
well, and the thing is, this is gonna sound funny, but it's not that there isn't much of a plot. There is a plot, but it's very familiar to you if you had to take a bunch of English literature classes. Or high school at least, because it really is sort of let's mash together bits of Heart of Darkness and Moby Dick, and sprinkle in a little bit of Parsifal, and you get yourself Fitzcarraldo.
Yeah,
Brian Sweeney Fitzgerald, who has renamed himself Fitzcarraldo, played by Klaus Kinski, is an Irishman. Sure. Yeah. Is a disgraced former railroad builder living in Iquitos, which is in the Andes in Peru, along the Amazon, in the early part of the 20th century. And this is when there is a boom in the rubber industry down there. He is in love with opera, completely enamored with opera and music, and especially Enrique Caruso, the great Italian tenor. He has this insane idea that he's going to build a grand European-style opera house in Iquitos, which is a bunch of mud huts and a couple of European-style buildings.
now there is a ton of money in the area because it's one of the few rubber tree.
Oh, no, there's plenty of money. They're just not investing it in anything except
Right.
for the brothel and the gambling house. I mean, it's not like they're spreading the money around to anybody who lives there.
Exactly.
In a way, it's not crazy that he wants to build an opera house there because it's the kind of stupid thing that rich Europeans or descendants of Europeans living in South America are going to put their money into, as opposed to, I don't know, infrastructure if the people there want infrastructure. You know where I'm going with this, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it's an insane thing to do, but at the same time, it's like, I guess it's not that insane, but it's kind of insane.
Yeah.
So he has this idea that there needs to be an opera house in Iquitos. The film opens with him and his girlfriend, who is the madam of the brothel in Iquitos, have rowed, 1,000 miles down the Amazon to a city in Brazil so that they can see Caruso with Sarah Bernhardt, the French actress, who can't actually sing. So they have her miming on stage. And
then you see the woman singing.
The actual woman singing, yeah. Like, imagine, how do I put this? Imagine if you're from Winnemucca, Nevada, and you have to go all the way to, I don't know, Chicago to see your favorite band. That's kind of what he did.
Right.
And I say that because I've been to Winnemucca, and it's very far from anything.
Right.
Nothing against the town.
But you got to see Wilco, man.
But you gotta, I really need to see Wilco.
Might as well see them in their natural habitat. They just play differently on the West Coast.
Wait a minute, Winnemucca's not even near a coast. It's just in Nevada.
Yeah, it's a hop, skip, and a jump from
No,
Sacramento.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you don't, I don't know, accidentally blow your tires out looking for a ghost town in the desert, and then
Who would do that?
I don't know. And then you spend like an hour out in the hot sun, and you walk a mile to a ranch, and
That's something only Werner Herzog would do.
Look, it was an interesting trip, and we ended up having to spend $500 on tires, and it's a long story. Anyway, let's just say there's a part of me that understands where Fitzcarraldo is coming from. So, this is the kind of guy who then, he rows 1,000 miles down the Amazon to go and see Enrique Caruso. And there's, again, I get it. Look, if I had to travel 1,000 miles to see the Replacements, I would have done it. Luckily, they came to Philadelphia once. So, he gets this idea that if I build an opera house in Quito, then I can get Caruso to come to my town and perform opera. He tries to drum up money in order to do this by going to the local rubber baron, Don Aquilano, who looks a lot like Stephen Fry. It's the whole time I just kept thinking, that kind of looks like Stephen Fry, specifically when he played the mayor of the lake town in The Hobbit, which I realize is not like a movie that anyone remembers fondly, and I certainly don't, but I did like him in it. Yes, Don Aquilano is a gambler and extremely rich, and so he says, I like you. You're a weird person. He is a weird dude. First of all, imagine being the kind of guy who is living in a rubber plantation town and you're constantly dressed all in white. And you live by yourself in a hammock. Your best friends are the town pig and a bunch of kids who just kind of gawk at you because you are a very weird dude who keeps playing his Caruso records and wearing white in a town where everything's covered in mud.
They dig Caruso, though.
They do enjoy the music. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? He's very good.
I don't know if the kids get it, but the pig gets it.
The pig loves it, which Fitzcarraldo does kind of point out more than once just how much the pig enjoys it.
It's one soulful pig.
It really is. He gets Aquiliano. I'm going to mess his name up. I'm going to mess up a lot of names. I'm going to apologize in advance because I am not very good at pronouncing a lot of the names in here, the names that are in native Peruvian languages, the names that are in Spanish. Look, man, I'm from Philadelphia. You're lucky I can speak English. And even that's debatable. So I'm going to apologize in advance. But anyway, Don Aquiliano says, look, you're funny. I'm going to fund an expedition. You see, there's this one tract of land, all right, down along the Ucayali
Ukulele.
Ukulele? It's ukulele? Oh my god.
Ukulele, I think, is how
The
they
ukulele.
said it.
No, it's not ukulele. But
No,
it's.
I mean, just from the movie, how they said it.
That is how they were saying it. I don't know that that's correct. But anyway, down along the river, the ukulele is. I feel so bad doing that, but I'm very bad at this. Anyway, there is an unclaimed section of rubber trees. And the reason it's unclaimed is because to get down this particular river, you have to pass through a series of rapids, and you can't pass this series of rapids. Your boat will be capsized. So nobody bothers going down there. Now, theoretically, you could go down a river that runs parallel, the Pachita. There is a narrow isthmus that separates the Pachita and the ukulele. And then it's a question of, can you get from one side to the other? Well, here's the problem. If you go down the Pachita, there are very hostile native tribes living along the Pachita, and they will stop your boat, attack the boat, kill everybody on board. And honestly, knowing what we know about the history of colonialism and exploitation, etc., do you blame them? The only people who had so far gotten down that river were some missionaries who were pretty quickly done away with and had to establish their mission much closer to the town than they wanted to. Fitzcarraldo looks at that map and he says, all I have to do is get my boat from one side, from the Pachita over to the ukulele, never going to get that right, and then sail up to where the rubber trees are, and then sail back down and pull the boat back over and then go back up the Pachita. See, here's the thing. Again, he is a failed railroad builder. He tried to build a railroad in the Peruvian jungle and it went nowhere. And he's like, aha, if I take the railroad and I build my railroad across the isthmus, I can just haul the boat across on a train. And you think about it, that sounds like a pretty good plan. It's not, as we soon find out in the film. He convinces his girlfriend, the madam, to fund his expedition. And so they buy the boat from Don Aquilano, and he goes and starts to hire his crew. And the most important members of the crew, like he hires a bunch of local guys, but the most important is a guy who calls himself Orinoco Paul, who is the captain and who's mostly blind. He hires Cholo, the engineer, who is a local man who, he's the engineer, but he's basically working for Don Aquilano as his eyes and ears. Yeah. You know, the idea being that, like, we obviously don't trust Fitzcarraldo, whatever his plan is. He is well known as a screw up. Yeah. So I'm willing to put money on this because I like to gamble. But let me send this guy.
Even if he isn't well known as a screw up, just one look at him, you're like,
oh yeah,
no.
No. He never gives you any reason to have confidence in his abilities. You know, his idea of making a pitch to building the opera house is to just show up at a party unannounced with his record player and just make everybody listen to Caruso. Yeah. Again, he's the kind of music nerd that you just find irritating. Like, God, dude. So anyway, so he hired Chola is the engineer, and he basically is in the role of like Starbuck in Moby Dick, where the whole idea is you're there to keep a check on this nut that we're sending down the river. Yeah. So
there's a lot of Moby Dick.
Oh, yes. This movie is basically Moby Dick meets Heart of Darkness being run by this annoying music nerd. And then they hire Huerqueque, the cook, he just kind of shows up, and they're like, we need a pilot. And he's like, I'm a great cook, and I am drunk all the time. Yeah. And they end up hiring him.
Like, that's not what he asked for, but okay, we'll take you.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and the thing is, because he's charismatic.
Yeah.
You know, he just kind of, he wanders in, he's just like, you need me.
Yeah.
And
a nut like Fitzcarraldo is like, oh, I speak this language.
Oh, exactly. A kindred spirit. Yeah. Come aboard. I don't know if you're good at anything, but you put yourself out. Style. Exactly. You put yourself out there. I respect that. And it turns out it's a great hire. He turns out to be like the smartest guy on the ship, and he's the only one who can actually speak any of the native languages. It's like the only smart decision that Fitzcarraldo makes in the entire movie. So they set off down the Amazon, and everybody notices, wait, you're going in the wrong direction. You're supposed to be going on the Ucayali. I am never going to get that right.
Yeah.
In part because I'm trying to read my own handwriting, and that is a terrible idea. So, but they set off in the wrong direction. Everybody's looking at like, hey, the boat's leaving. This is great. Wait, where are you going? And because his plan is to go down the Machita and get first his railroad and second cross the isthmus. They show up at the abandoned rail station that he had built, and there's still like this poor station master waiting in the jungle.
He looks good too. He's all dressed up and
he keeps repainting the ticket office for the first class tickets. He's very proud that I've kept this thing going. I keep, cutting back the jungle, and like I take the train out for a ride every week. This I'm working hard. When are we gonna get started again? He's just like, and Fitzcarraldo is just like, I thought you went home.
Yeah, well, the guy, he thought he was going to get paid. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm finally getting paid. Woo, he's here.
Right. I've
He's
never...
like, no, we're going to take your toys from you.
Exactly. We're taking away your reason for even staying here in the jungle. Bye. It's I've had some not great jobs. I would not wait around like that. No.
Yeah.
No. I have quit for much less. So, they load up the railroad tracks onto the ship. They get back onto the water, and they finally come to the mission.
Yeah.
Which you found really interesting.
They spell out, the whole game of imperialism and stuff.
Well,
like
yeah.
How they're trying to change everyone's minds using...
Yeah, it is an interesting conversation where it's this idea of we're here trying to civilize these people and they refuse to be civilized. Some of them refuse. They're
Well, the young people are turning, but
some of the it's like what's interesting is they set up that there's a division amongst the people in Peru, and I don't know if this is true going forward. You have essentially this cleave in the people's identity, where you have people who have been Europeanized, who, their ancestry is different Peruvian tribal groups. Now that they all work on these plantations and they've been herded into these towns, they see themselves as Peruvian and as, I guess, subjects of whatever the government is at that time, versus natives who hold no loyalty to any of that stuff.
right.
And then one thing that's really fascinating is all of the people who are Europeanized native people. I don't know how else to put it, but I think you get what I'm going for there, right?
Yeah.
So anybody who's been like Europeanized, what they consider civilized, they keep referring to all the native people as bare asses.
Right.
With the idea being, because you have this image in your head of, well, barbarians don't wear clothes. They run around and fight naked. And that's a really old idea. You see that, like, I could go back to Roman writings on the Celts and stuff where they talk about the same thing. And we talk about, people who talk about Native Americans that way. And, they're talking about them in that way here, which is very funny because when we do finally see these people, they're wearing cloaks. They're wearing robes the whole time. You don't see one dude's butt the whole time.
No.
It's extremely funny that like they have this image in their head of like, oh yeah, well the bare asses think this, that, and the other, and they have all this flowery language. And I'm thinking, and in the movie, very smartly shows, well actually no, they're dressed in like robes with like kind of nice stripes and stuff, and it's an absolutely absurd but colonialist mindset of what the native peoples are, these barbarians who can't even wear clothes. And so the stop at the mission kind of sets all that mindset up into what we're doing going down the river. So they're going down the river and they hear this drumming offshore. And it's obviously the native people, and everybody who is on the boat crew really starts freaking out. Fitzcarraldo's decision is, well, I'm going to get up on the prow and just play Caruso at them.
And it works.
It works. They're kind of like, they do stop playing the drums at a certain point and just start listening like, okay, this is different. Her KK explains that the local tribe in this area are waiting for a white god on a giant ship who's going to come and bring them to a land without any like pain or fear or anything like that. Now, this is a type of myth that you hear a lot about when Europeans go into native areas where they'll always be like, well, there's a story we have about a white god who's going to show up and do blah, blah, blah and become our leader. You hear that about when in Hawaii, when Captain Cook comes to Hawaii and he encounters, King Kamehameha. You hear that about, I think, when, is it like Cortez goes to Montezuma and, it's the whole, are you Quetzalcoatl type thing? Like, maybe I'm only half remembering something correctly, but there is this story. And the thing is, you never hear it from the actual native people. You always hear it from the Europeans writing later, like, well, they thought, we were told that they thought we were gods.
And we agreed.
Yeah, exactly. So this is another case of like, it's never coming from the native peoples like, well, you see, we were waiting for this white god to show up and here you are. Because once the natives kind of come onto the boat and see them, like their response is like, no, you're not gods, but that's a hell of a boat. And we are fascinated by this boat. And that's really the reason that they check them out. They don't think he's a god at all.
Now that's after the crew leaves.
Well, that's after the crew flees because they're terrified. As far as they know, we're doomed. And so in the middle of the night, they sneak off the boat and sail away. And is that when they chain up Paul, or is that later on?
That's when they chain up Paul. Yeah.
That is when they chain up Paul.
He's
yeah.
tied up and
so while he's tied up, and a couple other people, I guess, I don't know how they got rid of Chola at the time, but
one interesting thing, like Paul says, Paul survived
a previous trip
through there.
Yeah,
and he said, "Oh, things went bad once we shot."
Yeah,
and so maybe like these people, like this tribe, they just don't like being shot at.
Exactly. Oh yeah. They make that. He makes that point more than once. Like basically, don't shoot at them. Don't set off dynamite in the water. Don't try to intimidate them. If you don't do this, you'll probably be okay. And of course, the whole time people are doing things like trying to shoot at them and throwing sticks of dynamite in the water and all kinds of really stupid ideas. Interestingly enough, not Fitzcarraldo. That's not necessarily his motivation at the time. He's not. He's more willing to just try to figure out how to get what he wants, which is ultimately opera in the jungle. After having been deserted by their crew and the natives come aboard, and Fitzcarraldo is able to explain through Herkeke what they want to do. Which is they want to go and move the boat over from the one river to the other and get rubber. And shock of all shocks, they agree. Okay, we'll help you. Then they get to where the actual isthmus is, and there is a mountain in the way. and Herkeke makes the very smart suggestion of, well, look, let's just build a tunnel. You really want to move the boat over? Okay, why don't we have dynamite. We'll build a tunnel through it, lay down your tracks, and we'll move the boat over using a tunnel. And Fitzcarraldo says, no. No, let's go knock down the entire forest and build a bunch of ramps and haul a boat over a mountain.
The historical Fitzcarraldo, who this is based on.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is based on a true story.
Did this. But, well, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we will talk about that later, because this is based on a true thing that happened, kind of. Really, I don't know if they specify exactly how long they're at it, but they're at it for what sounds like weeks. Of these native people have agreed to help build a series of ramps and to haul the boat over the mountain onto the other side of the river.
Also, there is a time limit on this lease. He has 9 months to properly exploit the land, as the Peruvians say,
in order to make his money back and get funded for doing what he wants to do, his opera house. So there is a time limit, and they are under a lot of duress, and they force these natives to work. And at first you're like, is anybody agreeing to any of this? And it is a mystery for a good chunk of the film. Why would they do any of this? And at first I thought, well, I suppose if you show that, hey, we not only have guns but dynamite, that's going to intimidate people. But why wouldn't you just run to the jungle? We eventually find out through an absolutely grueling portion of the film where you just watch people trying to build these ramps and build all these structures and pulleys and everything, and like people are dying. And it's a bit like that stuff in the Ten Commandments where
yeah.
it's a lot like the Ten Commandments.
And apparently Herzog was inspired by Standing Stones and
Yeah, he was in Karnak in Brittany, I think, where they have these megaliths, and essentially think about like Stonehenge and how incredible it is that Stonehenge exists and how people hauled those giant stones across the island from Wales to Salisbury. So he was thinking about that, and then he, I guess, read the story about this Fitzcarraldo. Point is, they actually are successful. Her KK comes up with this idea of like, look, if you're not going to build a tunnel, here's what you do. You hook up essentially the engine of the boat to help power, the pulley system to haul it over. Her KK is the smartest dude in the whole movie, which is kind of great because when you first meet him, he's this like drunken lout who's got 2 girlfriends and he's like dragging along on this trip. And in the end, he is like the smartest guy. He speaks multiple languages and he, is like a natural engineer.
he's a little like Tuco in Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. Yeah.
And that, there's more to him than there appears.
There's more to him than it appears, and he's got a quick wit.
Yeah.
And he's a very interesting character. So yeah, they do it. There's a huge party. They have a celebration. They all drink yucca, which is like a fermented saliva drink of the native people. All the white dudes and the colonized dudes pass out. And the next morning they wake up and the boat is adrift going down river.
Bumping along the sides.
Oh yeah. The whole reason that he hauled this ship over the mountain was so that he could avoid the rapids. And what happens is they cut him loose during the night and send him right down the river to the rapids. And now we find out why they even bothered to do any of this. It was basically a human sacrifice to the river gods. They were saying, you want to do this insane thing and you want to try to avoid the river spirits. You know what? Fine, we'll help you. We're going to just like bring you right back into the river and we're going to set you on your way and let the gods have them and do what you will. So they do. And so then you have this really a great sequence of them going down the rapids of the river, and the ship is just getting tossed everywhere, and it's pretty intense. Like, oh my God, is this it? Are they going to die? This is the end of.
I think the record player starts again too, and it's playing opera as they're going.
That
down.
is one heck of a record player. Let me tell you, man. I mean, I have trouble with my iPod sometimes because I got one of those old iPod classes, and this guy's with a Victrola, and that needle is not skipping at all, man. Honest to God, they just don't build things the way they used to.
No.
Man. So here's the thing. They make it. They make it. I was astounded. They make it down the river. What's left of our crew does not die. They make it back to Iquitos. And he's got to go hat in hand to Don Aquilano and say, yeah, I'm broke. I didn't come back with any rubber. I came back with nothing because they cut me loose. So
and he's like, hey, easy come, easy go.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, I'll buy the boat back. He buys the boat back, but there's still 2 weeks left for that Fitzcarraldo owns the boat. So he instructs Paul, I want you to go to the city in Brazil, and I want you to bring back an opera company. And I swear to God, he does. Again, I could not get over the fact that this has, for Fitzcarraldo, a happy ending. The end of the movie is they come back up the river with a Brazilian opera company where they're going to perform, Bellini's The Puritans.
Yeah.
And then the end of the movie is them essentially performing the opera, coming up to shore, and there's Fitzcarraldo with a big cigar in his mouth, sitting on a red velvet throne on the ship and just being like, welcome people of Iquitos, I have brought you the opera. And there's his girlfriend down on the riverbank, she's just like waving, everybody's like cheering him, and he's just like, screw it, I won.
Yeah.
I was floored by that ending. Like, it's a happy ending for this idiot.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. I was seriously not expecting that ending.
And then it stops, and there's no credits. It just ends on that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just chew on that.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
It's like, I'm going to pull the rug out from under you, and you're going to land on a pillow. So yeah, it is a fascinating movie. Again, there are obvious parallels to Moby Dick. to Heart of Darkness, to Apocalypse Now. They're, right down to the use of like playing opera as you're, going down through a jungle. It's funny where it has all of these resonances with a lot of English language literature.
Now, Apocalypse Now borrowed a lot from Aguirre, Wrath of God.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah, in fact, a lot of movies are considered kind of descendants of that.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. I had no idea. Seriously, because I come to these things from more of a literary bent where I had to read Heart of Darkness, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times. I was an English major, man. That's what they do to you. So I know that pretty much by heart. Oh, in fact, there's a reference in the end of the film when he's talking about which operas are we going to perform? And at some point they mention Parsifal, which I had to laugh because Parsifal, the Wagnerian opera about the search for the Holy Grail, it comes from the medieval story of Percival and his quest for the Holy Grail, where he meets the Fisher King, who is the wounded king. My point being that the story of Percival searching for the Holy Grail then became a template from which Joseph Conrad built Heart of Darkness. From Heart of Darkness, you combined that with Jesse Weston's From Ritual to Romance and Fraser's Golden Bough and the Vietnam War, and you get Apocalypse Now. And so naturally Herzog, when he's name-checking operas, of course he's going to mention Parsifal. It all fits together because in the late 20th century, the story of the Holy Grail is interpreted as stories about environmentalism and the wasteland, degradation that industrialization wreaks upon the natural world and upon native people. There's an entire environmental interpretation of the Holy Grail story that can be done that is easily mapped onto this movie in a couple of different ways. That's my whole weird, I could talk for like a couple of hours about, themes regarding like the Holy Grail and madness and the Fisher King and how it could be related to, it's not just the obvious stuff like Apocalypse Now, where they actually name check T.S. Eliot's poem The Wasteland and From Ritual to Romance. But I definitely think that some of that was in the back, not even in the back, obviously in the front of Herzog's mind when he was making this film, because he actually bothers to name check Parsifal. Obviously Moby Dick comes to mind because, it's this madman with a boat and he is wasting a company's money, which is fine with me because, it's a rubber plantation. Go ahead, waste his money. They're monsters. In order to pursue this obsession. So, you've got this obvious like Moby Dick parallel. So, now that I've gone and given you like my half-assed English dissertation, what did you think of the movie?
I've been thinking about the ending, and I feel like he's done this before. He's tackled colonialism, he's tackled all these themes, and it's like, what's the craziest thing I could do? I could give it a happy ending.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah,
it's like Herzog's like, oh, I could mess with them even further.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's almost saying that like, yeah, like Europeans are terrible. We just do the wrong thing all the time. We never pay attention to, like we don't learn our lesson. We keep doing the same dumb things. Yeah. But we do have opera, and opera's awesome. So it's like he takes this character and he's like, he's an idiot. It does everything wrong. He has a inflated sense of self-importance.
Yeah.
But his as long as he follows Caruso, he will still land on his feet.
Yeah, that's true. As long as he can keep playing opera, he turns out fine. In fact, I think it's pointed out somewhere that every time he does go and play one of his records, his luck changes for the better.
Yeah.
The film can be seen as a metaphor for just the process of making a film and how it can be an incredibly destructive and torturous process. And yet if you get art in the end, was it worth it? I don't know. I guess if you make the art, you think it's worth it. If you really like art, I suppose you think it's worth it. I don't know that it is worth it if you're one of the guys who dies.
Herzog thinks it's worth it. Almost everyone else doesn't.
Right, yes. Watching this film is sort of a double-edged sword because on the one hand, I think it's brilliant. It's visually stunning. The shots in the jungle is gorgeous. There are certain framing things that he does that are really, really excellent. I don't know, I'm saying him, but it could, maybe it's his cinematographer. I'm not sure who, was doing it. But what the film ends up doing. So on the one hand, it is a brilliant work of art, and it is sometimes very funny. It is sometimes terrifying, etc. But when you read about the production and what a nightmare it was for everyone involved, when he went down there initially, he got on well with the tribe in the area, but over time that soured, especially when they started to build. He basically started to build like a village for the crew to live in there, they started to build a village, and what I was reading didn't explain what the village was. I don't know if it was just where people were living or if this was part of sets or something, but the native people were like, yo, we didn't say you could do this, and so that soured relations pretty quickly. So that's like on the one end of how things go badly.
I mean, they attacked the crew and shot an arrow through someone's throat.
Yes, so yeah.
Very sour.
Very sour. And then there was just sour feelings amongst the people making the film. Apparently, Klaus Kinski was such an absolute nightmare to work with and terrible that at one point supposedly this is coming from Herzog, so who knows if it's true, but he says that the chieftain offered to have Klaus Kinski killed, and he had to turn down the offer.
Because he had to finish the movie.
And he had already lost the first guy who was supposed to star in it, which was Jason Robards, which is interesting. I mean, I would be really curious to see what it would be like to have Robards in the role, because Kinski has such a strange and off-putting energy that really works for this movie. His character is infuriating, but there's something of a holy fool about him, so that you almost want him to win. I don't know if I would have gotten the same energy from Jason Robards. There is a documentary made about the film. It's called Burden of Dreams, which I would definitely like to see someday. But I've seen Hearts of Darkness, the documentary about making Apocalypse Now, and I have a feeling this is similar in terms of this is just an absolutely ill-fated production, and everybody is losing their minds.
Oh, so one thing I did want to mention, though.
Yes.
Was, so the original Fitzcarraldo, he was an Irish born, or not, he wasn't Irish born, but...
I think his father was Irish.
Yeah. And he, so as kind of a publicity, it sounds like he transported a ship from one...
Yeah, he basically did what happens in the movie, sort of.
But he took it in parts. He took the ship apart, which makes more sense.
Yes.
And it was only 30 tons. This boat that Werner Herzog decided to pull up a mountain using a bulldozer was it was 324 tons. So 10 times more heavy than the original boat.
Yeah, so that's the thing about this movie. On the one hand, you watch this and you go, well, Fitzcarraldo's nuts. What does he think he's doing hauling this boat over the mountain? Then you have to stop yourself and go, wait a minute, Werner Herzog is nuts. What is he thinking hauling a 300-something ton boat over a mountain? Because he's actually doing that. Now, granted, as you said, they can use a bulldozer or whatever to push it. But you have to kind of think about this as you're watching the film. This is insane, but also the people making the film are basically doing the thing that the film is about, and that's insane.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm still processing it. I'll be honest, I'm still processing the multiple levels of this film.
Oh, I do have one more thing to say.
What's that? Oh, thank you, Columbo. Go on.
just one more thing. So.
Yeah.
It starts in deepest, darkest Peru.
Yeah.
And colonialism is involved.
Yeah.
This might be set in the same universe as Paddington Bear.
Oh my God!
It is where he's from.
It is where he's from. Whoa! Does Fitzcarraldo take place in the same universe as the Paddington movies?
I say it does.
I'm going with it, and in fact, I'm going to lobby for Werner Herzog to make an appearance in Paddington Bear 3.
Yeah, I think that
The world needs this. The world needs this.
I love that bear.
Yes. I want, well, first of all, that sounded nothing like Werner Herzog, but
sorry.
yeah. Look, if I could find a way to pay Paul F. Tompkins to just say, I love that bear as Werner Herzog, I'll take that. I'll take that as a second. But more importantly, the world needs Werner Herzog to be in Paddington 3.
Yep.
Yes. Well, and on that note, that was Fitzcarraldo from 1982, starring Klaus Kinski and a bunch of other people. Follow us on Twitter. We are Mary VS Movies. Email us at Google. We are maryvsmovies@gmail.com. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, we are happy to answer them. We will do our best. We are thinking about setting up a Patreon. We don't know yet. We're not sure what the feeling is on that. We love doing this show, but it is a lot of work. Recording, watching, editing, we put in quite a bit of work, and we love doing it, but we have to spend money renting the movies, etc., so on and so forth. So we're thinking about it, testing the waters. Let us know what you think. For next week, we have 2 choices. Please get your Thomas Jefferson zombie nickel. All right. Our 2 choices are between Outland, which you described to me as
High Noon in Space.
High Noon in Space.
Starring Sean Connery.
Versus Honky Tonk Freeway, a film sent to us by Sarah Sahim, who described it as basically kind of like Nashville, but not. I've never heard of it. So our choices are Honky Tonk Freeway versus Outland. Heads is Honky Tonk, tails is Outland. Tails is Outland. Heads. So
Honky Tonk.
our next film will be Honky Tonk Freeway.
By the way, you can check out Sarah.
Oh, yes. Sarah and her sister have a podcast called Sister Sledgehammer, which we just heard the first episode of and found it a lot of fun.
Luckily, we're small enough. I don't think Roxanne will attack us with a sledgehammer.
I was going to say, we're insignificant enough that we don't stand in the way of the Roxanne juggernaut. So, anyway. So, until next time, put Werner Herzog in Paddington 3, you cowards!